Hello, it's John Heaton, and today I'm going to celebrate a Rolling Stones record. I'm not going to do the one which is just turning 50 years old this week, which is It's Only Rock and Roll. I'm actually going to do the following album, Black and Blue. It's Only Rock and Roll I've come to think of as the kind of weak link in all of the 70s Stones albums. I think all of the other albums released in the 70s are better than that one. And I don't have a great deal of time for it, but it's got its moments, of course. But Black and Blue is for me, a much more enjoyable record. This is my Dutch pressing, and apart from anything else, the cover is superb. And obviously you can open it up to the gatefold, featuring the new lineup with Ronnie Wood. Although when it was recorded, they were trying out quite a few guitarists. My original copy didn't come with the lyric sheet, but my Dutch copy did. I'm not sure if it was available in every pressing, but it's nice to have that. And then, what's very nice about the album is also it gives very detailed information on who played what on which track, including all the backup musicians such as Billy Preston, Nicky Hopkins. And the guest guitarist. And then the other pleasing thing about this Dutch copy is it's on beautiful blue vinyl. It's a little bit dirty there, needs a bit of a clean, but I picked this up in a second-hand shop in Aberdeen about 5 years ago, and I was very pleased. I didn't even know it was available on blue vinyl. So anyway, it got to number 2 in the UK, number 1 in the US. It was released on the 23rd of April 1976, although, as we'll see, it was recorded a good few months before that. It's 41 minutes long, so a decent length. Recorded in Musicland Munich for the most part. I think one track was recorded in Rotterdam, if I'm correct in saying that. I think the track Melody is recorded in Rotterdam, and then they did overdubs in a studio mountain recording in Montreux in Switzerland. So, and in terms of singles, just the one I think was that just the one single. I think Fool to Cry was the hit anyway, number 6 in the UK, number 10 in the US. Don't think there was another single. If there was, it didn't do anything. Anyway, it was quite an interesting period for the Stones because Mick Taylor had just quit in the very latter part of 74. And they went into the studio more or less immediately after Mick Taylor had quit and laid down Cherry O Baby on December 15th, 1974. And also Fool to Cry was an early one as well, December the 12th, 74. This was in Munich, which is the same studio they'd used for It's Only Rock and Roll. And then they decided to try a couple of guitarists out because they didn't know who was going to replace Mick Taylor. So Harvey Mandel plays guitar on Hot Stuff, the opening track, Memory Motel. And then Wayne Perkins plays guitar on Hand of Fate, Memory Motel, and Fool to Cry. Ronnie Wood is playing on at least 3 or 4 tracks here and doing backing vocals on a few more. So those were the 3 guitarists, and they kind of were trying them out. Billy Preston is playing on most of the album, and Nicky Hopkins. So they really had the cream of the keyboard session men on this album, and Ollie Brown is playing percussion on most tracks. But what's interesting is the album was recorded, as I say, started in December 74, and then sessions continued in March 75. And then I think it was the latest session I can see January 75 Melody, and then March 75 Crazy Mama, Memory Motel, Hand of Fate, and Hot Stuff, and then April the 2nd, Hey Negrita, the last track to be laid down for the album. So other guitarists who were tried out in the sessions but didn't make it onto the final album included Peter Frampton, Steve Marriott, and Robert A. Johnson. And also Jeff Beck came by to see what all the fuss was about and spent a couple of hours jamming with them. And then rather mischievously said, in 2 hours I got to play 3 chords. I need a little bit more energy than that. So he declined to join the Stones if he was indeed asked. He decided it wasn't for him. I thought that Clapton was rumoured. Maybe that was early on when Brian Jones died. They were thinking of getting Clapton because he did play guitar on Brown Sugar, on an early version of Brown Sugar anyway. So, to the tracks. Well, I think it opens up. I mean, I think I think the All Music Guide review to this album said this album is more about grooves than it is about songwriting, and I think that's true. And it's no more true than for the opening track, Hot Stuff, which is kind of a disco groove with great drumming from Charlie, and it's a bit repetitive, but that's the whole point. It's just it's a good groove to presumably to dance to at the time in the discos, and they were the later to do successful disco tracks on the following album, Some Girls Such As Miss You. So that's a very strong opener in my opinion, and a bit of a departure for the Stones. It was their first sort of foray into so-called disco, I think, thinking about it. This album also has their first foray into reggae, or not quite their first, because Luxury was on the previous album. But Cherry O Baby is a cover of an Eric Donaldson song from '71. It's quite pleasing. And Hey Negrita is kind of got a reggae groove to it as well, and that's got inspiration from Ronnie Wood. So those were quite interesting in terms of trying out new sounds, and Memory Motel is a kind of unique ballad for Mick and Keith because they actually share the lead vocal, which I don't think I can say that that's the case for any other song from the Stones, from memory. And Melody is a very soulful number, which Billy Preston probably should have been given a co-write credit for, but wasn't. It's his inspiration, Billy Preston. And when Bill Wyman covered this song on his Rhythm Kings albums, one of their albums later on, he did credit Billy with composing that song or co-composing it. So what else? And Fool to Cry is an interesting sort of sentimental soppy ballad. I mean, I suppose they'd done it before with Angie, but this is quite an effective one and very keyboard driven. Although there's footage of the Stones playing this in concert, or maybe it's a TV performance, and Keith is literally almost going to sleep because this was towards the end of his 10-year heroin addiction, and he was not in particularly good shape. Anyway, so what else can we say about, in terms of covers, it's quite unusual for the Stones to do a cover song of someone else's. They obviously had done it with Let It Rock in '71, which is on the Spanish copy of Sticky Fingers, because they didn't allow Sister Morphine onto the record, so the Stones had to put Let It Rock onto side 2, and I think elsewhere it was a B-side. Just My Imagination from Some Girls is a cover, of course. Harlem Shuffle on Dirty Work is a cover. Those are the three that came to mind immediately, but it's quite unusual until, of course, they did their Blue and Lonesome album, which is all covers. And of course, earlier in their career, they were doing covers all the time. But when they started songwriting, Mick and Keith tended to write all of the tracks for the most part. The cover, wonderful cover, they went down to Florida, a place called Sanibel Island Beach in Florida, and took this wonderful gatefold sleeve, and then the inside is like they must have waited a couple of hours for the sun to go down, and then they have this gatefold picture. So it's very effective and easily their best cover of the 70s, with the exception of Sticky Fingers perhaps, which was also a superb cover. But it's only Rock and Roll, the previous album, is a pretty sort of garish, dreadful cover of them walking down the stairs and all the girls fawning all over them. It's a bit annoying, that cover, I think, although it's drawn by the same artist who did Diamond Dogs for David Bowie. So there was a bit of a dodgy advertising campaign for this album, where there was a woman seemingly being beaten black and blue, and she says, "I'm black and blue from the Rolling Stones album and I love it." And this was paraded all over sort of Los Angeles and America on billboards, and it was taken down after protests from various feminist groups, quite rightly. But of course they got a lot of publicity from it, and it helped sell a few copies presumably. other interesting things about this album. Glyn Johns is featured as an engineer. Arif Mardin, although it's produced by Mick and Keith, Glyn Johns is engineering. Arif Mardin is doing the horn arrangement for melody, which I found interesting. And there were 2 tracks. I'm not sure if I've ever heard the original version, because presumably they kind of redid bits of them for To 2U, but there's 2 tracks appearing on To 2U which originally surfaced in these sessions. Slave, which has a wonderful riff, and I can't think why they didn't include that on this album, because it could have given a bit of oomph, because the one thing this album is probably lacking is kind of a couple more rockers. And not that Slave is very fast tempo, but it's got such a great guitar riff. I would have included it. Worried About You, with Mick singing his falsetto vocal, again, probably should have made the cut here, maybe instead of Hey Negrita, or maybe it just wasn't fleshed out at the time. Wayne Perkins plays the solo on that. So I thought that was interesting, and I think there's a song from left over from Goat's Head Soup on To 2U, because it was a bit of a kind of collection of older numbers. I think the song Heaven is from the Goat's Head Soup sessions. Anyway, Lester Bangs, the critic, said, "The heat's off because it's all over. They really don't matter anymore or stand for anything. This is the first meaningless Rolling Stones album, and thank God." Not sure what that's supposed to mean, but I guess it's derogatory. Robert Christgau is slightly more positive, saying Diagnosis not dead by a long shot. Bud Scoppo, one of my favourite American critics, because he did a superb review of Badfinger's Wish You Were Here in January 75 in Rolling Stone. Anyway, he comments, the only Stones LP to focus primarily on feel rather than subject matter, which is quite an accurate comment. And then Mick Jagger said it was a bit of a holiday period. We cared, but not as much as we'd cared previously. And presumably he was pissed off that Mick Taylor had left, and he was trying to think what to do. And I think that's one of the reasons the album was delayed a year, because they were deciding who to actually enlist to join the Stones. And by the time it came out, Ronnie Wood is firmly on the cover, and he's been there ever since. Keith Richards, soon after the album came out, said it wasn't very good, certainly nowhere as good as Let It Bleed. Well, if you must compare everything to one of your magnum opuses, you're going to fall short, I think. But then I think later he reassessed the album. Mick Taylor, interestingly, praised the album in a 1979 interview, which I thought was quite generous. So that was I showed you my Dutch copy. This is my original UK copy with the laminated cover. And as I say, it comes with the inner sleeve, but it's missing the lyric sheet, but it's on normal black vinyl. So I was very pleased to find that blue vinyl copy in Aberdeen, and so I've now got 2, black and blue. That's pretty appropriate. So that was a very enjoyable album. Not my absolute favourite of theirs, but one I go back to, and I think it's interesting because they were trying different styles and not just regurgitating the same sort of Stones rocker, which I think had been a little bit the case with the previous album. So a return to form, in my opinion. Thanks for watching. See you next time.